recording now?
Yeah, I'll start recording
Yeah.
now. Just 1 second. So all this dust.
Yeah, we can. I can understand it.
Let's go.
You know.
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
How do you design your career, and what have you done to get this job?
Okay. Initially, believe it or not, actually I started as a ceramic designer, and I started learning Chinese, Japanese and Korean cultures through art, through ceramics, tea ceremonies. So having knowledge of culture, because I really liked cultural studies and arts, I think this was a real leeway to learning about different cultures around the planet. As a child, I went to Europe. I also went to Singapore and Bangkok, and I really experienced different people other than the people of Australia. And I really was fascinated with, the world outside of Australia. And as a traveller, and I guess as a student, and you can probably relate to that. Then I got into Swinburne University. I got into multimedia, and there I learned a lot of languages, so like lingo and a lot of programming languages. I always liked BASIC. I learned BASIC as initially, what put together things like a lot of the visuals for Microsoft BASIC. I think Visual Basic also, right, 5 and 6. I started creating calculation systems and things. So from BASIC to Visual Basic, I always had a fascination with IT, but looking at it as a cultural but artistic thing. So then I thought, all right, we'll get into design. So I got into design. From multimedia, I got into design. So I moved from Swinburne University in Melbourne, from Hawthorn campus to UTS. And it was really, that's where I learned a lot about technology at UTS. I learned a lot at Swinburne, but I would say that it was really the springboard to getting me work. And it was having a good police record and having everything else, so having a good record. I didn't have much of a track record because I was still a student. Track record is hard. It's like, okay, you can get the qualification, but you learn your stars on the job. So like, you have the military stars on the job. It's the act and the action that you do on the job. You pick up and you get get that respect, and people know your stories and what you've done. Then so basically from UTS I got the design and technology degree, so postgraduate degree. I've gone back and forth. That's a master's degree at University of New South Wales at Kensington. But I always found that I had to go back to UTS and really finish off what I started. I've probably done about over 20 years of university at about 5 or 6 different universities in Australia. I learnt from the best doctors. I learnt from, and then in the workforce I learnt from a lot of senators, a lot of parliamentary figures, got to meet a lot of ministers and really get work with state ministers, federal ministers. I got to see how they run their departments, so and really surveying different people on different walks of life and different leaderships. I was made a Royal Fellow of Society in London, and that was the greatest honour. I got that when I was 29. That opened a lot of doors, opened a lot of doors in the military and other industries, different car industries. I worked with Hyundai and learned a bit about South Korean, machinery. I know that I grew up learning about Italian and German engineering, and I never really looked into South Korean industry or looking at engineering. So how I got in there it's really through various looking at different intelligence working with different people. So you get into the psychology of people, looking at their behaviour, their actions within agencies, within entities, how they work. So it's not just it's not just the job itself, but it's how you read people and have a good memory of different people that you meet. And I think you learn through feeling too. So if you have a good feeling, you'll remember. I think if you remember their first and surname, they really made an impact on your, because you're walking around like a human recorder, and you're trying to, you yourself are collecting data. So when you collect data as a human being, there is a bit of biasness, even though you don't want it to be there. But when you're doing something like digital, that it's what it is. It's verbatim, and can be used. So these, and I think information is. I've always said information is worth the price of, it's worth more than the price of the gold bars. So I always think information is priceless. So you can't really put a price on the way information is dealt with, because information can either be used for good or for bad. It can break an economy, which will break a nation. It's about having evidence. If that evidence helps with a political points. I've been on these things before. So I that either create digital content or have the content and to display it for users and users to see. It really depends on how things play out. That can either play out with the way of life of your nation too. So one person can make a big difference. So to the result of many citizens. So you're in a position of power. A lot of things are done. They are done secretly. They are done behind closed doors. Some things, like even doing this interview, not many people are forthcoming with information. One, because they've either signed a non-disclosure agreement. I could tell you about so many companies like PwC where I worked with their data. I worked with General Electric. I worked with the Department of Defence. I worked with Telstra. I know how their data works, how their data goes from here to India. Here, so Commonwealth Bank, how their data goes here to Hong Kong. So we have like data allies, we have physical allies in warfare. It's all one thing. I think there's no difference. I think it's a web of connections of, it's like an ER diagram, entity relationship diagram. And you are walking around, and every time you assess your environment, you're walking around like an ER diagram, and you do it in your head, like in mathematics, but it's a mental thing, and you can pick all the connections. It's an amazing, I think some of it's biological. I think if you're either got it, like you've got that skill to visualize and to view. I think some can be acquired. I think some skills can be acquired, but I still think you've got to have the spark to start off with. But really be reserved when to be reserved, and pause when to pause. But I think when you're presenting something, present it but really back up what you believe in. So you can either change history with what you have. You look at, I know that, there are a lot of soldiers that probably want Snowden's throat, but they don't realise that he was the one that actually created another way of destroying the enemy in warfare. So even though they've made him the villain, I believe his story was not always the villain. I believe he was a hero at one stage. I believe the media and other people behind the media, could be government, could not be, have made him the villain. So there's things like this. So you're either fighting for the blues, the reds. I'm lucky in my family we have many colours. Yeah, sorry, it gets very, very deep. I'm very passionate with what I believe in. I think it's my grandfather's brother. He was a partisan in the war, and I think my family's always been associated with a lot of intelligence people, from MI9 to get my grandfather's brother to the Pyrenees. We've had dossiers from CIA, a lot of different things. Actually, also the other thing is we also have an organisation in China that's bought the story and the rights to my uncle's story during World War II. So if China ever wanted to create a film on my grandfather's brother, and in Australia I cannot say too much about him, but all I can say is that he was a communist, and he was in Italy, and he was the Communist Party didn't get the accreditation of eliminating Hitler's Nazis, and I guess this is a good platform to say it. I guess, but they say the Democratic beat the thing, the Second World War. But when you're speaking to soldiers and speaking to family members, that really did change the nation. I believe that the Communist Party in Italy did have a big impact, especially when Russia came in and helped wipe out a lot of the Nazis. So they all had quotas to. In the end of the day, they had quotas of killing 2 Nazis a day, to survive. So I think even now everything is digital. Hackers do things to survive, do things to get kicks. Let's get back to the questions. I know.
Yeah,
I'm
you
just.
can just pause, check your phone. Just pause that.